Hello there, everyone, and welcome to GamePoints episode 276. Your weekly little get-together. We talk about recent gaming news. I'm, as always, your host, Steven Brand. Joining me today is...
I'm David.
Tonight, David, we have some more Dead Space Remake details. I'm kind of excited for them. Midnight Suns gets announced, and China hates gamers. But first, I want everyone here to know that this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching here live every Tuesday at twitch.tv/GamePoints or later over at youtube.com/GamePointsPC, feel free to join in the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns, etc. you might have. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. And of course, if you like what you see here, you know the myriad of ways to support when it comes to following, subscribing, and all that good stuff. David.
Yes.
Now, as we were talking about before we went on the show, you have been housebound due to the horrendous air quality where we are currently at.
Yes.
So that means you clearly had a lot of time to play games, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Excellent. What have you been cracking into?
Still churning through
Still
the
turning
Ascent.
through Ascent? Okay, fair enough.
Still got a couple games of Humankind running. One I'm doing okay in, the one I'm doing really bad, but I kind of want to see what happens.
One thing I did notice about Humankind while you're at it is, because I was fiddling around with that recently too, I caught that there is I don't want to call it a wind condition, but I will say there's an end condition that just simply says make the planet uninhabitable.
Yes, that is on the list of things you can do to end the game.
Now, I need to know how that I can assume I know how that happens, but I haven't actually finished a game of that yet, so I need to get around to just join the world.
There you go. And I did what I said I was going to do. I am about 6 hours into Psychonauts 2.
How are you liking it?
It is absolutely a sequel to the first game. If you like the first Psychonauts...
that actually sums it up perfectly.
No, but I mean that in a good way.
Yeah.
Like, if you like the first Psychonauts, you will like Psychonauts 2. Just period. It takes place immediately after the first game, with the exception of... So there was that VR game that they released.
Yeah, the Rhombus of Ruin.
Rhombus of Ruin, which takes place right after the first game. This takes place right after Rhombus of Ruin, but the whole intro video sums up the entirety of Rhombus of Ruin.
Excellent. Good. So
you just get Rasputin's little like voiceover and like its little like animated comic book almost going through the events of that VR game that not a lot of people played, and then it just drops you in.
No,
and
that's great.
Up to crazy psychic antics almost immediately.
That's great. Good. I'm glad to hear that game is true to form.
Yeah, it's legitimately funny. I'm really enjoying it.
I've been playing Ender Lilies. Do you know what Ender Lilies is?
Nope.
It is a Metroidvania game where you're this little priestess going around purifying things, and you have, rather than you attacking directly, you have little spirits that attack for you. So, for example, if you equip like the sword Knight Spirit, rather than you wielding a sword, this thing appears and slashes in front of you real quick.
Oh, okay, yeah. I have seen that game. I just forgot what it was called.
That game is way better than it has any business being. It is on the better end of the Metroidvanias. And if you like that genre, I would highly recommend it so far, based on what I've seen at the moment.
Wait, are you the guy that still hasn't played Hollow Knight?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know. I'm aware.
Okay.
That got brought up when I was streaming it a couple days ago, by the way, too. What I'm going to do with Hollow Knight is the same.
It's almost like you've gone out of your way to not play it. Which I know that there's games that you've done that because you're worried of overhype.
Yeah, I mean, specifically Undertale's the one that I can think of when that comes to mind, yeah.
But I don't think I could actually overhype how good that video game is.
So I am going to play Hollow Knight when it comes time. What I'm going to do with it is what I did with Ori and the Will of the Wisp, is that I'm going to wait until Silk Song is about to release, then I'll play through Hollow Knight for my first turn.
And then you'll jump into Silk Song.
And then I'll go right until Silk Song when it's done. That's what I did with Ori, and I really enjoyed doing that. Yes, Watermelon, bully me for not playing Hollow Knight. I know. Boo, I'm a terrible.
Just make sure you give yourself a very comfortable window of time between.
I hear it's long.
There's a lot. It is a chunky video game.
Yeah, that is what I've heard. David, let's go ahead and get into the various news, starting off with not necessarily the biggest story, but definitely the most recent. The developers at EA Motive had a live stream earlier today talking about their plans for the upcoming Dead Space remake. And normally I wouldn't be leading with this, but Dead Space is one of my favorite franchises out there, so this is definitely a selfish story that I wanted to get into.
Of course.
Yeah, it was about 40 minutes to an hour or so, and I kind of liked what they were saying here. And one thing I will say out the gate, I really appreciate these close looks at behind the scenes of development here. That's more than just, here's some concept art. Because they were actually showing, I hesitate to use the term gameplay, but they were showing those things where it's like, here is the clear box room with all the figures T-posing and lack of textures to demonstrate how they're improving gameplay in it. So I like those deep dive tech demos, especially from an industry that's notoriously secretive.
And even there, I feel like EA is even worse.
Yeah, so to see them being this open about it, I think means that they understand that there are a lot of eyes on this project, and that there are a lot of people who still, all the other things that EA have done in the past aside, hold them in low standing due to how they treated this franchise, especially at the end. Yeah. So I think EA is trying to do a goodwill tour with this here to see if they can't garner back some of that interest. And I've got a good feeling about this so far. One of the things they did show off is, did you ever play the original Dead Space?
Yes, of course I did.
Okay, and just making sure. I mean, I should have played Hollow Knight, for example, but I haven't. So we got to establish.
Okay, that's fair. Yes, I did play and beat that video game.
Okay.
That opening scene, still one of the best openings to any horror game franchise in the last however many years.
Yeah, it is good. The first 15 minutes of that game specifically are just gold.
They're so solid, yeah.
So the biggest thing about that game's mechanics is this idea of strategic dismemberment.
Yes. And once you kind of figure that out, you do kind of solve the video game.
Yeah, every enemy has a specific way it wants to be taken apart. So every enemy is kind of like a little mini puzzle to figure out how to take them down.
Yeah, which is why the later games in the series turned into more action-y shooters and less horror, because you kind of knew how to deal with the necromorphs by the third game. And it's like, oh, this guy, I shoot him in the legs, and then I shoot him in the head, and then, okay, and then this guy, I shoot him in the back, and then I shoot him in the, yeah.
Right. I still maintain that the second one is my favorite of that franchise, because I think it blended the action with the horror extremely well, and they paced it excellently. The third one, though, is just, I always liken that franchise to the Alien movies, where the first one is a pure horror film, the second one is an action horror, and the third one is just over 2 hours long.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
So they are improving that with adding this concept of flesh peeling on there, and they liken that to the idea of, you know how Isaac Clarke has his rig with the health bar on there, right?
Yeah.
So as you take damage, that health bar goes down. It's a visual way on the game to show your health without giving you just a number, like 88 out of 100. The flesh peeling idea is what's going to be the visual representation of how much health a necromorph has as well. So the more you're blasting
and
them,
gross.
Yeah, the more you're blasting them, the more you just see exposed bone and stuff like that. But there's also some gameplay mechanics around this. In the first game, the original game, you would have your trusty plasma cutter, but you'd also have the machine gun, right? And one would take off limbs, but the other one was just kind of okay, I'm just going to shoot you until you go down. In this game, there are going to be different weapons that do different things. So, for example, a weapon like, say, the plasma gunner might be great at dismembering, but not great at chipping away at their health. So, to liken this to another game, it would be like when you're going up against the capital ship or a boss, and you want to, a raid boss in an MMO, and you want to take out the ads or the bigger turrets before you start chipping away at the main boss's health. So you would use your dismemberment weapons to limit its damage output. Then you would switch to another one to actually remove the skin, which might have low dismemberment ability.
It's interesting, but this whole conversation is super gross.
I get it. But that's the stuff that they're playing around with while keeping the spirit of the original game intact. And a lot of my fears about what they were going to do to this game have been alleviated in the fact that, one, they're bringing back Gunnar Wright as Isaac Clarke. He is the face and motion capture and voice of Isaac Clarke. Admittedly, Clarke says nothing in the first game other than a few grunts. So that's fine. But they're also going to be expanding on the backstory. Not necessarily the story itself. It's still about Clarke trying to track down Nicole on the Ishimura. If you've played the first game, probably going to end the same way. But what it sounded like they were going to do from talking about them is include all that weird side media shit actually into the game itself, rather than having you go out and track down the comic and the movie and all the novels. Now,
Okay, that's cool.
yeah,
So you actually, hopefully during gameplay, we'll get more of like what happened on the Ishimura right before you got there, because I know that they
yes.
did have that animated film that was really flipping cool on delving into the backstory of what the crew was going through, like in the 20 minutes before Isaac arrived.
Yeah, but none of that is ever actually mentioned in the game.
Yeah.
So it does that thing that both you and I hate, where you have to read outside media to understand what's going on in the prime media.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded like, they did not come out and directly say it, but it sounded like that is the stuff they're going to be adding to it. So they're not going to fuck with the main plot. This isn't going to be like a Resident Evil Resident Evil 1 remake on the GameCube, when things go completely different in the second act of that game with like Lisa Trevor running around. They're not, it doesn't sound like they're adding anything like that into here. They're just fleshing out the background story a lot more. I'm sorry, was that?
Pun intended.
I really like that idea. So it's kind of walking the fine line between a reboot and a remake. And I appreciate that they're keeping more toward the original basis, because that seems like they understand that they don't want to piss off the fans, or and at least treat the property with some respect. That
I do just like
hopeful
that we're getting a Dead Space remake that is sounding very much in the vein of the Capcom Resident Evil remakes, in that, you know, we have this story, we have this thing, and we're gonna kind of rebuild it from the ground up and try and keep all the parts that you loved in there, but also, you know, make it a little modern and give it some more like systems.
I just wouldn't expect anything too far deviated from the original game from how they're talking about it,
which is
great.
How those Capcom games work.
Yeah, that's how I want to see it. But yeah, so you can take a look at that Dead Space live stream. I will be linking it down in the descriptor below of this video over on the Discord for GamePoints as well, if you want to take a closer look at that. But I was just really impressed that for a game that was just announced, officially announced, that's still reasonably far out, that they're doing these deep dive behind the scenes stuff. And more companies are doing this, which is great. Set your expectations out the gate, and you will tamper down backlash if something goes wrong. Please, companies that are out there, be more transparent in what you're doing. You don't have to hide everything behind this weird sheen of obfuscation to keep people from knowing what you're actually going to release. It doesn't have to be that way. I appreciate it. I want more of this.
There you go.
That's not the only reboot that was talked about this week, though, David.
It's not.
There was opening night live for Gamescom last week. Jeff Keighley rolled out a whole bunch of stuff, and it started off the show with something that both you and I were kind of interested in. And if I'm reading you right, I know I'm in this boat. I think our enthusiasm for this has dropped significantly since its reveal.
So I'm worried. So, of course, we are talking about Saints Row, which we've addressed on the show that I'm a huge fan of. I know you like those games as well, but I've mentioned multiple times that Saints Row 3 is on the very, very exclusive David Club of games I have 100%ed. And I don't play anything more than like 10 hours, so that's saying something. And we did get a cinematic trailer for this, simply titled Saints Row, set for release in February of 2022. It's set in a southwestern American region called Santo Ileso.
Looks like a combination between LA and Las Vegas almost.
Yeah, it's all kind of in there. And we got kind of an idea of what they're going for, and we had some quotes from them that we're taking after. And one of the main things I want to talk about was there was this blurb that came out post the trailer launching when they were interviewing one of the head studio devs, who mentioned that their influences for this game are John Wick and Fast and Furious. And I don't know if you've played the old Saints Row games, but that's not what I'm looking for.
No.
As much as I like popular things, and I do,
Saints Row is John Wick if John Wick starred Jim Carrey.
Yes. So there's a couple things about this. They've talked about how they're going to tone it down because the games as they came out originally kind of were of their time. And I can understand some of the stuff they're talking about because, you know, much like old TV media, there's some stuff that doesn't really play in, you know, the current environment anymore. And that's cool. You can leave that stuff out. I don't need that to enjoy this video game. That's actually not the part that I'm upset that you're leaving out. The last video game started with you playing as the President of America with your Vice President Keith David, who then went into space after an alien invasion destroyed the Earth, and the end result was you becoming the Emperor of the Galaxy.
With a time travel machine.
These games are fucking ridiculous. Not like over the top set pieces, not an action movie, just completely absolutely absurd, and that is what I've always loved about the Saints Row games. In one of the earlier games, there was a point in time where you're literally driving around in a septic truck spraying the contents on a rival gang's territory to lower their property values.
The second one, I think, is when you get that septic tank driving. Now, that's actually what I started. The second one specifically was I was like, okay, there's something to this game. And they leaned into it with the third one when they went, okay, people like that.
Yes. So when they really leaned into the ridiculousness and they made that their kind of wheelhouse and where they're, and I'm always thinking, okay, how are they going to top this? How are they going to top this? That got me so excited because that's what makes these games different than Grand Theft Auto. When you start citing your influences or like major movie blockbusters, then I think, so what's going to keep you from being any different than, you know, Grand Theft Auto? And yes, thank you, Wilson's Corner. Gat of the Hell was the last game, which is a direct continuation of Saints Row 4, where you literally go to hell to rescue one of your comrades.
Reality has no business in a Saints Row game. And when I saw this trailer, I don't know about you, David, when I saw this trailer, I watched this and went, okay, so they took the cast of Watch Dogs 2 and put it in a Grand Theft Auto game. It's the hipster version of Saints Row.
I'm just worried because it does very much look more like a Grand Theft Auto game to me than a Saints Row game. And I mean, maybe the characters are great. Maybe everything's crazy. Maybe these people exist simultaneously and they're going to hear stories of the boss being elected president of America. You know what? That's fine. As long as you can get me some of that ridiculousness back.
Admittedly, we are judging this sight unseen. They did a small little gameplay trailer recently. It was about 7 minutes or so, kind of quickly showing what the game is going to look like. And it does come out soon, by the way. February 2022 is not that far away. It's like 5 months or so. Continuing that trend that I'm loving of announcing a game and then going, and it's out in 5 months. So I will give it credit for that too. But I remember watching this and seeing that cast and going, that is a bold move, having a completely new cast without any references. Like, it is a complete reboot. There doesn't seem to be any references beyond the name itself.
They removed the, I'm going to say it wrong again, Fleur-de-lis?
Fleur-de-lis.
Thank you. Whatever that thing is, has been like the logo for Saints Row since the franchise's inception. Pulling that out of the game, this may as well be Agents of Mayhem 2.
I did see the fleur-de-lis in some marketing. For example, like the rebooting marketing gift they had on there had the fleur-de-lis flanking both sides of the word of that on there. So that fleur-de-lis is in some of the marketing for this game.
I'm just really worried that this is just a branding thing, and this game is Saints Row in name only.
That's what I'm afraid of as well. From the cast to the way it looked a little bit more cartoony than I was expecting.
No, that's fine, because if you go back and play the old games, they look a little cartoony. And if you're saying that the new Saints Row game looks like Fortnite, you're a fucking idiot.
That's kind of the vibe I got from that trailer. It has that like art style. It's like that Cal Arts art style I see everywhere in cartoons now. There's a certain distinctness about it that makes me go, really? They couldn't have gone a little bit different with that palette at all? But
it was their palette first, bro.
So, no, this looks different than the other Saints Row games. I'm sorry, but there's something wrong about it. It doesn't look saturated enough. Or something. I will admit that I cannot put my finger on it.
All right, that's fair.
And it could just be hate. I could just be hating it. But
I'm still hopelessly optimistic.
There was something about this that's like, it's like when an indie artist gets bought out and you start seeing their stuff like at Starbucks and something changes. I hate to use the term sellout, but it feels like the Saints Row, the 6th Street Saints have sold out here.
Honestly, actually, If they could tie that into the story of this video game, and that's legitimately what's happening, I'm back on board.
I will always go to one of.
They become a franchise and start licensing out the name of their game to young up and coming games throughout America.
Hey, it worked for The Who. They straight up had an album called The Who Sells Out, and it had advertisements all over the album cover. So
Yeah.
it clearly works.
If you're giving me Spaceballs the sequel out of this, and it's all just a mislead right now.
As a side note, I did see someone walking around with Spaceballs the T-shirt a couple days ago.
Perfect.
Wilson's Corner asks, is THQ publishing this new game? This is being developed by Volition, which in turn is owned by THQ Nordic, I believe. So yes,
they are on the list.
Though keep in mind, THQ now is different than THQ when Saints Row first came out.
True, because it's all
because it's not actually THQ. They just bought the name, so it's a different publisher using the same name, I guess, is the best way of saying it.
True, but they do have a not substantial, but a decent chunk of the old group.
I mean, yeah. Well, the developer is still the same. Developer's Volition.
Yeah.
But keeping in mind, Volition, makers of one of my favorite games of all time, Free Space 2. And they'll never go back to that, because who the fuck makes a space shooter other than Chris Roberts, allegedly? So,
Space 2's coming out.
You and I are not the only people that seem to have reservations about this, by the way. This trailer is getting savaged on YouTube at the moment and just other various social medias with more dislikes to likes.
I'm worried, but people are like mad.
Yeah, I'm not super mad at it because I haven't seen enough about it.
I haven't seen the actual video game. I saw a cinematic trailer and I've heard an interview and I'm like, I don't know. That doesn't sound like what I want. And there's people that are like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened in my life.
I think people went into this expecting they expected like a soft reboot where you would still have Johnny Gat and Washington Pierce and all those like the old crew in there. Just as like a soft reboot, get an origin story, as it were. Instead, they got a whole bunch of people that no one had any connection with, no one who's any of these people are. And they're just calling themselves the Saints. And I'm like, okay. Now, what would be great, David? How's this for something interesting? It turns out that these people are committing copyright infringement, and the real Saints show up like a third of the way into the game as like an enemy faction.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If they can somehow throw a twist into this that acknowledges the actual existence of the previous video games in a way that makes it so this isn't just a reboot with no knowledge of what came before it, then I'll be pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and then I would also get why they would play that close to the chest, because you wouldn't want that kind of thing leaking out. So, and they've done it before, which is why I'm going to be relatively blind going into this, because to be honest, it sounds like we're both in denial, says chat. It could be. It very well could be.
You don't understand how much of my next year is riding on this.
This is one of those things, though. I am cautiously optimistic about it because Volition has made good stuff in the past, but they also made Summoner.
They also made Agents of Mayhem.
Yeah, to use a more apt comparison. I don't hate it, but I'm not excited for it either. It just is, which, ironically enough, is what I felt like about the first Saints Row.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with I'm not mad. I'm just worried. Which makes me sound like a disappointed parent. Oh, man, that's horrible.
That wasn't the only thing that we called out on Opening Games Night Live. Firaxis and 2K Games finally showed off that Marvel XCOM game that the entire internet knew about for at least a month or so now. And it was Marvel Midnight Suns, a tactical RPG set in the darker side of the Marvel Universe. David, I'm actually kind of excited for this because it
Terrible name. Looks great.
Well, the Midnight Suns are an actual group.
Okay, still a terrible name.
It was the 90s. This is if you look at the family logo for Midnight Suns, it looks 90s as fuck. I like the setting because it deals with a very integral part of the Marvel universe I know nothing about, and that is the supernatural side of shit. Your Mobius, Blade, Ghost Rider kind of Constantine's DC. Sorry, it deals with that section of the Marvel universe that.
Which they never really address.
No, they don't.
In media other than comics.
So I'm really looking forward to getting deep into that. This sounds like it is going to play, at least from the mission side things, as like an XCOM game, where it's a strategy game, probably 2-point action system. I will say I'm a little bit bummed that XCOM has died for this, because this is the XCOM team making this. I finally got some like more things have been revealed as it goes on, which means XCOM 3 at its best, if it is ever even going to be developed, is years away from now. And of course, I'm probably wrong on that too, but we'll see.
Hey man, you're talking to an Armored Core fan. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. The main character is going to be custom, so you create your own character, and they'll be fighting alongside a roster that includes Iron Man, Captain America, Wolverine, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, Blade, Ghost Rider, Magic, and Nuku Minoru, who apparently is one of the Runaways.
All right.
That just feels like they're trying to promote the Runaways TV show that's currently going around right now, because I haven't even heard of this person.
I actually wish less of the roster were characters that have already been on film.
Yeah,
I don't. And they delved a little deeper into. Give me some more weird shit. Come on, guys.
Yeah, I don't need Iron Man, Captain America, Wolverine, and Captain Marvel on here. I get Wolverine because Wolverine's done some of this magic shit before in the past, so he fits. But Captain America, Iron Man, and Captain Marvel specifically, that just sounds like we need at least some people that are familiar to the Marvel franchise for people to actually show up and play this. Doctor Strange, though, perfect fit. Blade, perfect fit. I'm very curious to see what they do with Ghost Rider here. So that stuff is really interesting to me. We'll see some gameplay of this later this week. It is coming March 2022. Another game revealed to be coming out within like 3 weeks of everything that got delayed this year.
Yeah, so there's literally no holiday releases this year, right? Just nothing. And everything is set for Q1 next year, which means that most of it is not hitting that.
Yeah, it's getting
There's
delayed.
just no way.
There's
no way. Because they over the Gamescom week, we had what? 7 or 8 major titles all announced for like the same 3 weeks in February.
Yeah, like Horizon Forbidden West is somewhere around this time. I had a list of everything coming out within 2 or 3 weeks of each other, and it's not here. But this is just like it was back in 2019.
It's just kind of fun because that close of the fiscal year has become more the hotspot than the holiday season.
Right. It really has been. And you know what I attribute that to? Dying Light. Because the holiday season has been reserved now for your annual franchises, your Maddens, your Call of Duties, your Battlefields.
That's what I was going to say. I blame it less on Dying Light and more on the yearly franchises and everybody just being like, you know what, screw it. We're done competing with Call of Duty and football games.
To expand out my thought more, though, to tie it into Dying Light went, okay, what time of year has nothing ever come out that we can release on? And it was that time of year, and they did really goddamn good. So everyone else went, oh, people are willing to play games during that time of year. Okay, flood it.
People will buy video games during other months than these 3 months. Almost like people just like video games.
So Marvel Midnight Suns coming out early next year. I do not expect it to stick to that March 2022 date because they didn't give it an actual date. They just said March 2022. So that strikes me as one of the games that would get moved back to like April, May, June release, but we will see. And then one more thing I wanted to mention about Opening Night Live, David, is despite your claim that literally nothing is coming out holiday season, Halo Infinite has a date of December 8th.
Yeah, keep talking. Let's talk about how much of it's actually coming out.
First off, I want to mention this is way later than we were talking about last week. I remember saying probably like November 15th, which would have been the 20th anniversary of Halo, on or about there, and also caught Black Friday.
And I said next year.
You did say next year. December 8th, I still don't think that's necessarily going to make that date. Furthermore, confirmed Forge and co-op will just be added later, so they're missing parts of the game before it actually comes out. But campaign
no
and
campaign
multiplayer.
Co-op.
No campaign co-op, no Forge.
So,
I don't think this game is coming out December 8th.
The multiplayer was already announced as being free.
Mm-hmm.
So the campaign without co-op is basically an afterthought. Forge doesn't matter. This is the death of Halo. This is the last Halo game.
That's not fucking hyperbolic at all. Come on. The death of Halo. If anything was going to be a death of Halo, it would be... I will say, these problems that we're talking about is not what the death of Halo is.
These games have not been as good as people said in a long fucking time.
That's going to be the make or break, because if Halo Infinite drops and it has a bunch of issues, that will be devastating to this name brand, because they've already had a shit show at the Master Chief Collection, and the last few Halo games have been nowhere near as well received as like your original 3 and ODST has been.
Yeah, and there's just whole people talking about how it's the greatest franchise of all time, and it's just, it hasn't been in a minute, so this game kind of needs to swing out of the park.
Halo Infinite
They're
is
still dealing with the fact that they're building it for the OG Xbox ones, and they're releasing half of the video game, keeping in mind that the multiplayer is free to play, so you're going to pay full price for just the campaign, no Forge, no co-op. And it's, I don't know how this game's going to look by December. I really don't.
Halo Infinite is that star football player who's won like 5 Super Bowls but a decade ago and just refuses to retire. That's what Halo is. You can still see some of the old shine on it. They still occasionally surprise you with what they can pull out, but it comes to a point where it's just like, dude, you got to go away and make room for some new blood or something. It just really does not have that same panache that it used to. But it is still Halo, arguably Microsoft's biggest franchise. And I really hope that they nail this, because God knows it needs it. And I'm not saying Halo is bad, but it really does not have the prestige it once did as the franchise, as it warrants.
Yep. Wilson's Corner shouting out Halo Wars.
Halo Wars 1 and 2 were really good.
And yeah, that I will happily concede.
I like them as a real time strategy guy. I thought those were excellent.
But I guess I'm just shading the mainline Halo titles at this point, because, 4 and 5 and Master Chief Collection I don't think were great games.
No. Opening Night Live did have a bunch of other video game announcements. I'm not going to go over them all right now. It was about 2 hours long, and I felt like it could have been only an hour, because it started off strong but got real dull. And I was holding on through it. You can watch the old VOD, because I did co-stream it. And I was like, okay, at the end they're going to end with a banger, right? Because that's how you end. That's how you end these shows. The one more thing kind of thing. Well, in this case, the one more thing kind of thing was one of the biggest goddamn disappointments I've seen in a long time. And they closed with Death Stranding Director's Cut again.
Yeah, right? Didn't they just close with that the last time they did a stream?
Keeley, my man, I like what you do. I think you're a greater good. I think you're a net positive good for the industry. You keep trying to add more prestige to this. You do some classy shit. I like your game. I like your swagger, man. But god damn it, I get your bros of Hideo Kojima, but please, for the love of Christ, to end your show with something else that isn't Death Stranding, a game at this point that's like what, a year and a half old. I know Director's Cut has some cool stuff in it. But the time to strike with the Death Stranding news was 2 years ago. We're over it. I liked it.
I still don't like Director's Cut. Still think it's a bad name.
Yeah, because it implies that Kojima didn't have his hand in every single goddamn step of that game. And you want to talk about a game that is Kojima as fuck, it is Death Stranding.
Right? That was literally him being handed a check and say, make a video game. And him going, all right, give me 2.5 years.
I just wanted to mention that because I felt it was one of the weakest endings to one of these shows in a long time, and I felt that it was done that way, not necessarily because for no other reason other than Jeff Keighley and Hideo Kojima are just such bros.
Yeah,
that needs to be put aside.
If they hadn't shown this off at the last event, this could have been cool.
Yeah,
but they literally just did this, and that's really the trouble with it. But that's not all the Death Stranding news we have.
No, it is not.
In a via Game Informer, Norman Reedus says Death Stranding 2 is in negotiations. In a recent interview with Adoro Cinema, courtesy of Twitter user @Nibel, the actor confirmed a sequel is the current plan in the most casual way possible. When asked which character he thought would win a marathon, his character from The Walking Dead or from Death Stranding, he was quick to side with Sam Porter Bridges because of his motorcycle and the exoskeleton, which, fair. What's interesting is that he added, I think we're doing a second game. The game is in negotiations right now, so yay. While not to be taken as an official announcement quite yet, his comments do sound promising for those hoping for a continuation of this particular world.
This is the most casual, roundabout way to say, yeah, we're thinking there's one in being pitched at the very least.
Yeah.
This isn't.
Who do you think would win a race?
This isn't necessarily
Daryl or Sam? And he's like, oh, Sam for sure. I'm pretty sure Sam's gonna have another video game.
Yeah. This isn't the first time we've heard talk about Death Stranding 2, by the way. Kojima's kind of envisioned this as an anthology series of some kind where it might not necessarily be in the same universe, but share some of the same themes.
I can't wait to bridge Canada. That's where we're going, right?
Maybe. It's just cold. It's cold and they got nothing but like hockey up there. But what do you think? Do we really need a Death Stranding 2? Because I don't think so. I would sooner have another Metal Gear than Death Stranding 2. I played Death Stranding. I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed my time with it, actually. I thought it was an amazing game. But I don't need to revisit that world. I've gotten all I need from it.
So I would be actually excited with something that takes place in universe, but isn't that game again.
Okay, like what?
Give me anything, right? We're in this crazy post-apocalyptic timeline, and I'm playing as this courier dude, and that's cool because we kind of had an idea what was going on in America. But much like we talk about various other franchises, especially I always think of Fallout, what the hell's going on in Europe? What the hell's going on in Africa? What the hell's going on in Asia? Like, I like these kinds of games that can explore what happens everywhere else because there's so much post-apocalyptic stuff that's just, this is what happened to America and we have no idea what's going on anywhere else. And I kind of just, I want to know. I'm interested. I don't know if you saw recently, but there was that mod for Fallout that's being made, or yeah, the Fallout London.
Oh, I've heard about this, yes.
And which is a fun side story because one of the people that was behind that mod actually just got hired by Bethesda because of how good the mod is.
I actually was going to put that in today's show notes and completely forgot about it when I was writing it. I should have.
But it's just something that's super cool because that's something we've never had from that universe. So I like the idea of let's explore the rest of a post-apocalyptic universe. That sounds super interesting to me.
Now, chat mentions if it's a Drakengard Nier situation, they would love it. So, do you know what the connection between Drakengard and Nier is?
Hell yeah. No, okay. That sounds amazing. For sure, let's lean into that.
Where it's just like the most tenuous of connections between the two games, but technically a shared universe.
Yeah, dude, that sounds awesome.
Another game that does that very well, by the way, is Xenoblade Chronicles. There is a very tenuous connection between Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2, which on its surface seem to be like Final Fantasy, where the Final Fantasy games have really nothing in common other than some shared themes.
Mm-hmm.
But there is an actual direct story link between 1 and 2. And it's done up in that same Drakengard Nier kind of way, but a little bit more blatant, but very similar to that, where you don't really need to play the other to get what's going on in the other one. That would be interesting to see as well, because they seem to allude to this idea of multiple other worlds in Death Stranding.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, different dimensions. So I'm very curious to see them expand on that. But I don't want just a Death Stranding 2 where it's just once again Norman Reedus.
Yeah, I don't want to walk back to DC. If that's like, you know what I mean?
You forgot your keys on the West Coast, so you have to go back and start going on it.
Yeah, I don't need that.
It's yeah. So I wouldn't. What can you say? It sounds like Death Stranding 2 is at least being pitched, and I wouldn't be surprised if it gets greenlit, considering. I don't know if it will be for PlayStation anymore, though. It might be for everyone. I don't think PlayStation was happy with the results of the sales of Death Stranding. I think
Sony was quick to be like, hey, come over here. We'll give you a bunch of money. We'll give you a studio. Do your thing. And then they went, wait, what is this?
What do we do?
This isn't Metal Gear. He's like, yeah, you guys said I can make whatever I want. This is what I wanted to make.
We'll see, but if it gets greenlit, I'd expect a quick turnaround of this as well, because the first Death Stranding really didn't take all that long to make, comparative to other Kojima projects.
Also, just more stuff in that engine.
Yeah, that engine is glorious, for sure.
The Desm engine is pretty badass.
For sure. Hey there, Macmanic. It's good to have you. We have a couple more stories I want to get through before the night's over with. We have this one coming up right here via the BBC, a source that we've actually used more than a few times on this show.
Yeah, it's your go-to place for gaming info.
Yeah, you know it. China cuts children's online gaming to 1 hour. Now, that headline is a little bit misleading, but not by much. To the article itself. Online gamers under the age of 18 will only be allowed to play for an hour on Fridays, weekends, and holidays. So it's even worse or worse, depending on how you take a look at it. China's video game regulatory has said, The National Press and Publication Administration told state-run news agency Xinhua that game playing would only be allowed between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. So it's not even 1 hour, David, like you start the clock. It's you have this exact window
Yes.
to play. It also instructed gaming companies to prevent children playing outside these times. Earlier this month, the state media branded online games spiritual opium, which I believe we also talked about how China was very clearly coming after people playing, or kids specifically playing video games. What do you think?
Okay, so to get a little more details on this, there are some of the gaming companies that are working on implementing facial recognition technology
Yeah,
into
that would
their
be
games
Tencent.
to help enforce this.
That shit's
And the
terrifying.
companies that are not could be getting in trouble. There's also the fact that shares of Chinese gaming companies dropped dramatically after this news was released because, of course, they're limiting their gaming.
Yeah, if you look at the stock for places like Tencent, Alibaba, just China in general, they have dropped precipitously over the past few months because there has been this massive crackdown on everything in China lately as they try to tighten up regulations and controls in that country. Mainly because I think of a response to... I don't want to get to it because it might get the video pulled. But yeah, China has been on a censorship crackdown lately. Just ask Jack Ma, for example, what happens when you think yellow too big for your britches there.
So, something that I thought of immediately, and I had to say because I knew that you would hate me for it, but if you are able... Please don't actually take my advice. I'm an actual idiot. Nothing I say matters. But if you're able to invest in Tencent stock, now is the time to do it. Because I guarantee that the first thing that they're going to start doing as soon as this goes in is start investing even heavier on the international gaming scene.
I understand that logic, right? Because it's cheap and you think it's going to go back up. I don't think China's going to let these companies get away with what they have been. I think China is going to go, no. We're done pretending we're capitalistic. We're going back to the bad old days again. And we're just going to be more open about it. I don't necessarily... As someone who eats crayons for a living and is not giving financial advice at all, I have divested myself from any and all Chinese technology firms completely. That is not financial advice. That is me just telling you what I have done. Your results may vary. But I personally do not feel that investing in the future of Chinese technocracy is a good idea. Not from I need to do right by America, but because I think it is on the verge of massive and total implosion over the next couple of years.
Nope. It's going to grow. It's GameStop to the moon.
But yes, they are banning video game playing except between the hours of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. on Fridays, weekends, and the occasional holiday for most kids.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah, that is insane.
If you're an adult, though, you can still play as much video games as you want.
Meanwhile, in South Korea, this story is via gamesindustry.biz, the South Korean government has announced plans to scrap a controversial law that blocks young people from playing online video games late at night. The law was introduced in 2011 to prevent excessive playtime and gaming addiction and bans players aged 16 or under from playing online PC games between midnight and 6 a.m. But now the Korea Herald reports that the nation's Military of Culture, Sports, and Tourism and Ministry of Gender, Equality, and Family plan to abolish this law out of respect for young people's rights. In the absence of a curfew, South Korea will rely on the current choice permit system. Introduced a year after the aforementioned law, this allows players to request a permit per game and designate hours for playing these titles with the agreement of their parents. While the government says this leaves China as the only nation to restrict gaming hours by law, it appears to be concerned still about excessive gaming. David, Jesus Christ, I don't want to live anywhere near any of these countries.
To be fair, we've had far more stories of people, kids, and grown adults in South Korean gaming cafes playing for actual days and dying, which I could not think of a single story example of that happening in the States.
Live your best life. If that's how you want to go, so be it. Don't ask, because my stance is, if you want to distill me down to its base components, do whatever you want. Don't ask me to pay for it. If that means you're going to sit down for 72 hours or 72 days straight playing a video game and die because that's what you wanted to do with your life, That is yours to do with. Knock yourself out. But Jesus goddamn Christ. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at chat here, because it looks like we got some responses coming in. Stealthy Twitchy says, "I wonder how they classify SimCity as a city planning homework assignment. I guess to get around the the Chinese law, they just say, hey, it's because it's homework doing it. I don't think China cares, and I think that China's the kind of authoritarian state that if you try to play around with semantics that we usually let you get away with in America and other European nations, they would just throw you in an internment camp and be done with you. And they go, does anyone else have anything smart to say about it? Macmanica says, same China that makes 120 plus hour MMORPGs. Keep in mind, China is very big on making things so the outside world we're not letting their own people use them. Yes, there will be Chinese companies that make 120-hour MMORPGs that are not allowed to be played in China because they get money from outside influences. Same with all their social media. There's a bunch of, like, for example, not quite analogous, but Twitter has Chinese state-run media corporations. They're listed as Chinese state-run media corporations on a platform that its own people are not allowed to use. So they cater to the outside world. Wilson's Corner says, it doesn't seem like a gaming crackdown. It seems like Xi is orchestrating a massive cultural shift. If you look at the wording they used in the past few years, it makes me think China might be angling their culture towards spirituality. There is something to be said about that, because apparently there is now going to be mandated, like, I don't know the exact phrasing of it, but it's the equivalent of, like, what would Xi do cultural hour? Where they're trying to make him some kind of like a spiritual leader of the Chinese people. Like, what would our glorious leader do in these situations? So I do tend to agree with you on that, Wilson's Corner.
I think he plays games at 7:30.
Oh, what a fucking rebel. God damn. Like,
I don't know what to do about any of this. Like, I know we needed to talk about it because it's news, it's gaming related, it's right in our wheelhouse, but we can't do anything about this. And I honestly don't even know what to think about it.
This is one of those stories that I want to bring up for the same reason people slow down when there's a traffic accident. There's nothing you can do. Cops are already on the scene, but you're going to look in fascination and go, holy shit, what a clusterfuck.
Yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. One thing I will say is that next time you think about that's a good idea, that Tencent keeps buying up gaming companies in America and shit like that, keep in mind, we don't just import their technology and their video games, we also import their ideas, which is why you're starting to see things like credit score systems or social credit systems slowly creeping their way into culture. But that is another topic entirely.
Indeed.
David, we've got one more story here. Why don't you bring us on home with it?
In another story from gamesindustry.biz, Gearbox is opening a Montreal studio. Yes, that's right. We are ending with a studio opening, everybody. Get excited, because it's cool when we get new video game studios, even if they are
I like ending on something positive or something slightly silly, and this is great when we don't have to talk about closures.
Gearbox Entertainment announced its second Quebec studio, Gearbox Studio Montreal, part of a Canadian $200 million investment the Borderlands developer is making in the province. Studio plans to build the Montreal headcount to 250 people, which would push Gearbox's overall staff size to 850. And the Montreal studio is going to be working on Borderlands as well as a new IP, which is honestly the most exciting part of this announcement to me.
Yeah, I'm pretty done with Borderlands. It had its moments of sun. I thought it was really cool. And the second one comes out, started to kind of fade with all their DLCs. And then the third one came out, I was like,
pre-sequel killed me off, honestly. Yeah. I haven't even touched the third one yet.
You know what I want from Gearbox? I want them to go back to Brothers in Arms.
I just want them to make more video games.
That aren't Gearbox. Or not Gearbox.
That aren't Borderlands.
Yeah. That aren't Borderlands. Hey, they tried to make Battleborn.
Yeah,
they did try new art. They did try.
They did make Battleborn, and then nobody played it.
So congrats on Gearbox. I hope that gets staffed very well. Congrats on the city of Montreal for getting a bunch of new jobs coming in as well. Like you said and alluded to earlier, it is always good when the gaming industry expands as opposed to contracting, as so often happens in this industry.
So Montreal is becoming kind of a great place.
But yeah, Montreal has been a hot spot for video games. From Montreal, Edmonton, there's a bunch of Canadian tax breaks, I believe, for setting up development studios there. Same in Texas. I believe. Tech. That's why you're seeing a bunch of studios popping up in Texas as well. Like Arcane has a studio there. Gearbox is based there.
If I was picking between the two, I would for sure go to Montreal.
Oh no, too cold. Too cold.
Also,
They also have pictures of Queen on their money. Can't handle that. Can't handle that. David, that does it for the news. I have nothing clever to segue into new releases, so let's just go ahead and get right into it. I suddenly realized that I was out of news stories, and I needed to think of something clever to get into.
I got you. David, I'm going to have to wait forever for this Montreal Gearbox studio to make this new video game. I need to play something now.
I'll do in a pinch. It's good enough for government work.
Well, you tried. You didn't, but I tried.
I did nothing, and I'm all out of ideas.
Anyway, new releases. We do have new releases this week because video games exist again. And first on the list is something pretty damn cool. TinyTopia hits PC. This is a physics-based city builder that's very casual, and it's, I don't know, take a look at it. It's kind of neat. So you're making toy towns and cities on tiny terrain. So you're combining building blocks to create new mega structures. You're testing your skills in physics-based challenges, and basically you're creating cities in like toy play areas or inside a house or on the end of a ruler or in a little sandbox, or there's a bunch of different levels and a bunch of different challenges, like build your city to be this high, and you can kind of just stack buildings next to each other and they'll combine to form like tier 2 or tier 3 buildings, and you can make them too tall and they'll start to fall over because they're toys, and that's what happens. So it's kind of a neat little twist on the city building genre, so take a look if that sounds interesting to you. Lamentum hits the PlayStation's Xbox, Switch, and PC. This is a 2D top-down survival horror exploration game set in New England in the mid-19th century.
This looks cool.
And this does look pretty damn cool. It's, I don't know, take a look at it if that sounds fun. It's said to be more of like an old-school survival horror, at least by the devs' own admission. So, I mean, take a look at that if that sounds interesting. Less action, more trying not to die to scary things. Kiwi, PlayStation's, Xbox's, Switch, PC, puzzle platformer, a cute cooperative postal puzzler starring Jeff and Deborah, who are two small kiwi birds working in a whimsical post office.
This also looks adorable. I get the feeling that this game is actually very high quality.
It looks great, and I feel like this is just like a co-op shenanigans time.
Yeah, it strikes me as stuff like if you liked Overcooked or any of those other like frantic co-op games, you'd probably enjoy this, just based on looking at the trailer and pictures alone.
Yep. Song of Iron hits the Xboxes and PC. This is a side-scrolling action-adventure game where you're playing as, I think you're a Viking. It looks like you're a Viking. You're holding the axe of a fallen foe, worn and dented. It will suit its purpose. What lies ahead is still a mystery. Your goal is not to save your people. You must find the great temple of the gods.
I mean, that sounds like some Viking shit.
Right? But take a look at this game because I think it looks pretty neat, and it's from a solo dev. And I always love shouting out things when it's just one dude churning away on a video game for a while. I do expect some amount of bugs, maybe an issue here or there, but it's one flipping guy, damn it, and that's awesome. So take a look. Rustler hits the PlayStation's, Xbox, Switch, and PC. This game looks fucking ridiculous. This is a prime open world old school GTA clone in medieval times.
Yeah, GTA clone, like the top down old like GTA 1 and GTA 2.
That's why I say old school. I mean specifically like Grand Theft Auto 1, Grand Theft Auto 2, where it's top down, it's kind of isometric. You can run around, you can horse jack people, it just looks completely ridiculous. It's got a bunch of pop culture references. It looks like it's 100% dumb but on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
It does. So, it does.
Take a look at it.
It does look actually pretty entertaining. I'm not going to spend money on it, but I'd play it.
Damn. Guts in Goals. Hey, it's PlayStation's, Xbox, Switch, PC. A sports action multiplayer mixes arcade-style soccer with beat-em-up gameplay that results in a hilarious way to play soccer. So basically, you're running around with like almost cricket bats and beating the crap out of each other and then trying to kick the ball. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Looks kind of entertaining. The Big Con hits the Xboxes and PC. This is a 90s crime comedy 2D side-scrolling where you're playing as a runaway teen con artist. Choose how to make your scratch as you don disguises, pickpockets, and rip people off in this comedic crime-filled adventure. Experience the totally rad 90s and all its plaid and payphone glory. And it does look pretty damn 90s. Clid the Snail hits PlayStation and PC. This is a top-down action shooter starring a snail. A quirky top-down shooter about a grumpy humanoid still armed to the radula. Experience a dark fantasy fable and explore an unforgiving miniature world to exterminate this slug plague with an arsenal of badass weapons.
Yeah, fuck
and a
them
unique
slugs.
set of snaily skills. This game looks way better than I think it should, going
Agreed.
off of the description. Like
Agreed.
graphically, gameplay-wise, this game looks legitimately good to me, and I don't know how I feel about it. Late kicks Xbox and PC, story-driven indie adventure game set in 1986. Meredith Weiss takes a break from her career in the big city to deliver mail in her hometown. How will she experience 2 weeks in beautiful Providence Oaks with its iconic lake and quirky community? And what will she do next? It's up to you. Yeah, story-driven game where you go home after a long time and see what's going on.
Strong Firewatch vibes from this, where it's not really anything happening, it's just people's lives unfolding before you.
Yep. El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron, a game I didn't think I'd be talking about in 2021. Fantasy action RPG, which was released a decade ago on the Xbox 360. It's a unique third-person action adventure game filled with a deeply artistic world building, outstanding aesthetics, and thrilling battles. Experience the incredible mix of 2D-like platformer action and a colorful 3D world in an exceptional setting. People like this game a lot. Like a lot.
It's has
I
a
never played
very strong cult following. I've got a copy of it somewhere. If you
There
like,
are people that fucking love this game.
yeah, if you like weird, colorful fantasy visuals, this game is up your alley. If you like to play games because you like to see what a game can create, this game is up there because it does some really interesting designs.
Yeah, I think it looks kind of weird, but I never played it, so I don't have any nostalgia. But take a look if you're interested. Rico Lunding, it's the PlayStation's, Xbox's, Switch, PC. This is an FPS comic book shooter. I like throwing the comic book in there because it gives you an idea of what the art style looks like. It's not quite full 13 cell shaded, but it's kind of leaning that way.
A little bit more Void Bastards.
Yeah, that's fair. A gang-busting, name-taking, explosive co-op shooter. Battle your way through a high-rise tower stacked with East End gangsters, solo or with a partner. Crash your doors, dodge bullets, and turn weapons of the fallen into your personal arsenal. Do whatever it takes to reach the top. Looks pretty fun. WRC 10 hits PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. Sim driving game based on the World Rally Championship. Unlike the Dirt Rally series, this is fully sponsored. And I think, at least from early reviews that I've been reading, this might actually be the WRC games getting on Dirt Rally's level, supposedly. Off-road racing simulation, basically here for the 2021 rally season. Celebrate the 50th anniversary of the competition. It's got a bunch of legendary cars. It's got some old school races. It's got all kinds of stuff in it if you are a fan of rally. And last but not least, Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous. This week. Yeah, hits this week on PC. This is a fantasy CRPG, which I'm pretty sure just stands for computer RPG.
Yeah, this is Do you know what Pathfinder is?
Yes, I am aware of what Pathfinder is. Pathfinder is Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, except for they decided to just make that its own thing and then start iterating on that instead of Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah, so, yes, you know what Pathfinder is.
Embark on a journey to a realm overrun by demons in a new epic RPG from the creators of the critically acclaimed Pathfinder Kingmaker. Explore the nature of good and evil, learn the true cost of power, and rise as a mythic hero capable of deeds beyond mortal expectations. If you've never seen a CRPG, it's like Divinity Original Sin or
Wasteland, Pillars of Eternity, if you want to go back farther, Baldur's Gate.
Yes.
David, I really, really want to play this, but Did
you ever play Kingmaker?
No, I didn't play Kingmaker.
I'm pretty sure that's what you said when I was talking about when Kingmaker came out all those years ago.
Yeah, well, I just finished up DOS 2, and I don't know if I'm ready to get into like another 30, 40, 50 hour RPG that looks like that right now.
Oh, you did finally finish DOS 2?
I did finally finish DOS 2. That final boss fight fucking sucked. God damn, it was a cool idea. Spoilers for DOS 2, where it's like 3 different factions fighting each other in this giant clusterfuck at the end. I was like, okay, that's a cool idea. I appreciated it. The difficulty curve for that fight jumps up so goddamn high, it's not even funny.
Yeah, that's fair.
At least for me.
Still a cool video game.
As an aside, I do appreciate, remember that, totally off topic in new releases, but you know that part when you're getting to the last area and there's like only those free of sin can pass through this area?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know this, but apparently if you actually play the game as still goody two shoes, you can just walk through it. You can't do anything. You can't like steal. You can't say anything angry. You can't. You have to just be like a total like think as monk as you can possibly monk. But you can just walk right through it without getting killed. Right? Instead of like normally you're like trying to sneak your way through it or cheat the system or something like that. But if you play a character of pure heart, not good heart, pure heart, you can actually just walk right through it and not die.
Yeah, they did a lot. There's so much shit going on in those games, which is why I'm still excited for BG3. Even though, yes, I'm aware of the fact that it looks and plays a lot like
I
DOS
just
with
can't
a
bring
Baldur's Gate
myself
skin.
because I sunk so many hours into finishing up DOS because I was like, I have to wrap this up. I'm going to finally beat it. So I didn't quite burn myself out on it, but I did sink 180 120 hours into it, and I'm just that is still recent. That is within a couple months recent when I finished that. So I'm like good on that style game at the moment. Mathematicus says they've been too disappointed too many times by the Dungeons and Dragons experience. There are a lot of mediocre
There's so many video
CRPGs.
games that are trying to be D&D,
And
and
the
they're
problem
just not.
is that style doesn't hit too well with the younger crowd. It relies a lot on nostalgia. And if you're trying to capture the group that is nostalgic about that kind of game, they're immediately going to start thinking of your bigger hits like Neverwinter Nights, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, Planescape, and few things can actually rise up to that level.
Yeah, the problem with the D&D style video games is that they can't actually replicate D&D in the sense that you can't break it like you can in an actual game of D&D.
Yeah.
You know, if you decide to go through the door you're not supposed to, or you decide to fight the guy that was supposed to be a quest giver in an actual campaign, then your DM gets to think on their feet and just make up a new story or tell you can't do that. Like, you know, there's ways that you can kind of break it, and the way the world flows is what makes D&D special.
Computer code cannot match up to how quick the imagination can expand.
And so that's always been my challenge, is that there's something I want to do and I just can't. But if I was playing a campaign, hell yeah, I can.
Yep.
I can climb over things that are waist high in D&D, whereas there's a lot of video games that say that I can't because I don't have the ability to jump, and that rock is just too tall.
Yeah. You can't just stack something and climb up on top of it. That said, however, Divinity comes damn close to letting you do that.
It gets, yeah. That's why it's one of my favorites.
David, that does it for new releases, which means that also does it for the show as well. This has been GamePoints episode 276, and thank you all for showing up. We do stream live every Tuesday right here at twitch.tv/GamePoints, where you can be part of the conversation. But if you can't join us live, you can also watch old episodes of the show either at our Discord server, link provided down there somewhere, or over at youtube.com/GamePointsPC. You can follow the show on Twitter at GamePointsPC, myself, Stephen Brad at CapitalistPig21, and David there at Palshlife_Satori. And if you like what you saw here, you know what streamers want. Follows and notifications, turn on bits, subs, likes, all that good stuff. But, like I said, that comes us to the end. So stay safe, take care, and until next week, we'll be seeing you.